that. And now, let's please welcome Karen Karbo, author of In Praise of Difficult Women. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Have a seat.
I feel like Madonna here with my little microphone.
I know, it's pretty great.
I know.
Have a seat.
Got my pillows. Okay.
So, In Praise of Difficult Women.
Yes, 29. It's 29 difficult women.
Yes. So it's this book that is these short stories about 29 different women throughout history.
Correct.
Who, as you say here politely, dared to break the rules.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about some of the women who were in this book and how you picked them.
Well, fortunately, there are many more than 29 difficult women in the world, but these are the 29 women who spoke to me. Mm-hmm. Mostly they're women who lived in the 20th century and into the 21st century. They are women who were women who did not really care what people thought about them, right, which is one of the main character traits of difficult women. And they also were women who sort of progressed our culture forward. So we have Frida Kahlo, we have Martha Gellhorn, who was a war correspondent. We have Elizabeth Taylor. People are surprised that she is an inspirational, difficult woman. We have J.K. Rowling, Amy Poehler, Rachel Maddow.
Yeah.
So it's a whole sort of kaleidoscope of difficult women who have dared to break the rules.
And it is a really nice mix of women. You know, so often when there's sort of a collection, sort of like, let's go back and talk about the 5 people we've been talking about
right,
forever. So it was really exciting to see, especially very contemporary women like Amy Poehler and Rachel Maddow in it. It's like being important, doing amazing things didn't stop 30 years ago.
Exactly. Exactly. And they were women that, I am actually a somewhat accommodating woman. And many people are surprised that writers write not to necessarily express or communicate, but discover things. So, one of the things that I learned when I was writing this book is that if someone runs into me, I will no longer say, I'm sorry. That's sort of the first difficult, right? Do you ever do that?
It's such a thing. Like, oh, I'm sorry. It's an immediate thing.
Right.
Like women, is that a thing that a lot of you also do? Like, oh, I'm sorry. It must be my fault. Right? I see hands.
And the other thing is too is that when I think that we now expect women to have opinions. However, if you do not come off your opinion so that everyone in the room is happy after a certain length of time, you get called difficult.
Yes.
Right? Well, now you're being difficult. So all of these things, all of the women in my book, a lot of them were extremely feisty and extroverted. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was writing about people, for example, like Jane Goodall, who was hugely introverted. Because guess what? To be a difficult woman, it doesn't mean you're leading the parade. It doesn't mean you're hosting the show necessarily. You can be very sort of quiet and difficult and just go about your business.
Yeah. Well, and like Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the one who's in the book, and you had that example. She wasn't, right? Like, woohoo! In the last few years, she's become a notorious artist.
Yes.
But she was, went through life, but at a time
right,
when being a lawyer, becoming a judge, these
right,
are not things.
Right, and yeah, she was born in the 30s, and she was and is a very gracious, very soft-spoken woman. Yet, she's made of steel.
Yeah.
She was one of 9 women in her Harvard Law School class of 500. And they still gave her grief for taking a man's spot.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, one of the things, too, that, I think that writers don't get to necessarily pick when their books come out. This just was sort of, a propitious time for it to come out.
Sure.
And one of the things that I'm hoping for is that, we have #MeToo, and we have, #Time's Up, but we also all have to get up in the morning and floss our teeth and live our lives.
Absolutely.
So I think when we read these stories of women who did it in much more difficult times than we're living in now, I hope it's a smidge inspiring.
Yeah. It really is. It is inspiring to read these stories back to back. It's nice because they're short and they're kind of bite-sized, and if you happen to be somebody maybe who gets interrupted and can't read long stretches at a time, you can read these little, almost vignettes.
It's true that many of us are like this, but I don't think those kids that were here tonight are like that.
No, those kids have actually already finished the book.
I think for those of us adults, though. Correct.
Yes, and it's really, it's inspiring to read these stories back to back and to have all of these different examples. Because I think something else that we may occasionally be dropped into as women is the idea of, here's a model, you're supposed to be this.
Exactly.
Here's this model, you're supposed to be that.
Right, and that was something that I really aimed for. When I chose my 29, I wanted them all to, I looked at their lives through very specific personality traits. So there were ambitious women, there were feisty women, there were brainy women, there were determined women, and you know, so I wanted my readers to be able to, you know, read an essay and think, oh, I could do that.
Right.
That sounds like me. Because really, we don't have to be different. We just have to have the courage to step into the more difficult sides of our personality.
I really like that takeaway. Now, is there anything that in working on this book and learning more about the stories of these women that surprised you?
You know, I think the thing is that, I mean, maybe this is not surprising, but I think a lot of them are so iconic that we assume that they did not have difficult times. It's not as if being difficult is going to guarantee that your life is a bed of roses.
Right?
You know, I mean, they would go through hard times, but they were never willing to sell themselves out to make it easier. And I think that you know, that they had the courage to kind of embrace their hardship, and they were not going to change their personalities in order just to have it be easier.
That makes a lot of sense, because at the time you're going through life, you're not necessarily like, I'm going to be in a book someday. You're just trying to make it to Tuesday.
Well, and I think too, women, you know, women, meaning this is something I do, is, you know, that we tend to sort of twist and turn our personalities so that everybody can be happy, and you know, so that there's no one that's discontent around us, and that's one of the things I have to say I really admire about men, generally speaking, is that they don't get super upset if someone is upset with them.
Right.
You know, men kind of think, oh, I'll talk to him tomorrow. I'll wait till they cool off. And I think women can learn from men to just like, I'll catch you tomorrow. You'll sleep on it. Maybe you won't be mad at me. Maybe you will. But I'm not going to race and rush to change who I am so that you, person that sometimes I don't really even care about you, are not angry with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Well, Karen, thank you for doing this book. There are copies out front. You can get one today. And thank you so much for coming and joining us and talking about the book with us.
Thank you, Temple.